This is the Fight Night Podcast. I'm Sergio.
I'm Eli.
And I'm Aaron.
And we're covering UFC Edmonton, starting from the prelims going up. First fight, Jack Shore against Youssef Zalal. How do we think this one's going to go, guys?
As you mentioned, I think this is a battle of crossroads. One fight has to go up, one fight has to go down. I think this is what it is.
Technique-wise, Jack Shore is mostly jab double leg. And at least one thing we learned from the Youssef Zalal versus Topuria fight is that Youssef Zalal has pretty decent takedown defense. And this was when Topuria was at the start of his career and not as much of a boxer. He was a lot more of a wrestler during the start. So it is impressive, though it was an early Topuria, that Zalal was able to hold off Topuria's wrestling for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Shore, it's really a sad place because he took his first loss at bantamweight and then he moved up. He's had mixed success and he just doesn't look the same kind of like boogeyman status that I think he had when he was at bantamweight on that giant streak. I think once he took his 2 losses, he's been a lot more different. And you see like the weight on him. You see him moving slower, not as fast. And I just don't think featherweight is the weight for him at all.
I'd agree. I think he's looked rather mid at featherweight. And Youssef Zalal has looked pretty good. He's on a surge in a sense. Also, the last fight that Shore fought against Joe Anderson Brito, he could not get the takedowns going and actually got pushed against the fence himself. He's having trouble imposing his grappling game on these featherweight opponents like he was able to do at bantamweight, and even at bantamweight, when he went against a physical powerhouse in Ricky Simone, he also had a hard time. I think the opponents he's fighting are too big and too physical for him.
I think I agree with that as well. And talking about Zalal, he's I believe like two win streak now, both submissions. And statistically, I was looking him up, and I think his last fight he had about 83% accuracy in striking, and that says a lot because it was a first round finish. So that transition from what you go getting him to the grounds, I think that's what will favor him in the Jack Shore matchup, because Jack Shore's takedown defense is last 3 fights was close to abysmal. Well, Zalal had almost 100% takedown accuracy in his last 2. They fell off after that, I believe, but his last 2 look strong.
Mm-hmm. So we're taking Youssef Zalal to beat Jack Shore by unanimous decision or submission?
I can see submission. I'm gonna favor submission just because Jack Shore is the type of guy that likes to go there. And Zalal is just a bigger guy. Like, Shore struggled with the bigger guys. That's why he ironically moved up, because he lost to the stronger, like Simone. But, like, he's not as strong at this weight class. He doesn't look as good. Even just his physical appearance, his body does not look as in shape as he would be at bantamweight. And yeah, I think he's just going to get out-muscled and outgunned.
I think this could be very well submission. I don't say unanimous decision or split decision. I do think it's going to go with full 3 rounds.
I agree. I think Jack Shore is technical enough to keep himself safe on the ground, and it'll go the full 3 rounds, and Youssef Zalal will win by unanimous decision. Moving on to the next fight, we're covering Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. How do we think that one's going to go, guys?
I think Charles Jourdain is just a dog. Like, he's had some up and downs, but the fact he's going down for this fight, right? I didn't mistake that. I never like seeing that at all. I mean, especially because he didn't look small as a featherweight at all.
He looked quite good in the weight class.
Yeah, he looked pretty good, and he's pretty, I don't want to say like large for the weight class, but he looked like a featherweight. Then to drop all the way down to bantamweight for that, I don't know how he's going to hold up. I don't know how. There's just so many questions that he has to answer at that weight class. And when it comes to that, I'm always going to favor the guy who's the natural guy at the weight class.
Well, so my biggest thing, I think, Victor Henry, I believe, is 38, 37.
He's pretty old.
And then Charles Jourdain is on the younger side. I think he's 28, 27.
Yeah, he's pretty young.
Yeah, you do see a lot of times where these young guys coming in, and the UFC is setting up one of these older guys to just take a fall, kind of boost up the younger prospect of the rankings. But Charles Jourdain is 0-2 this year. Victor Henry is 2-0 in his last 2 years. When you match up people with win streaks or lose streaks, I do always favor the guy with the win streak because it is a mentality battle. Once you kind of start racking up losses, it is very hard to break out of that stigma. And I think that's a perfect example of what happened to Tony Ferguson after that Justin Gaethje fight. It was just more of a snowball effect downhill. And I think this is something that's going to happen to catch up on Charles Jourdain because he's young, 28, with already I think it's 8 losses on his record.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is where the mentality part kind of comes in and shows that he is just not able to handle this.
My position is Victor Henry is going to give the kind of fight that Charles Jourdain likes. A in-your-face, coming at you kind of fighter that gives Charles Jourdain the ability to counter in combination. Though I think Victor Henry, being the natural person at this weight class, and the fact that Charles Jourdain has lost his preferred fight before to fighters like Shane Burgos and Jean Silva, I don't think he's going to be able to stand up and keep competitive in a new weight class with someone as good as Victor Henry. When we look at Victor Henry, he beat Hany Barcelos and was having a somewhat competitive fight with one of the Bashrat brothers. The only fight he's lost in the UFC, I believe, is against Rafael Assunção in Assunção's final throwback performance, his turn back the clock performance. And I just think Victor Henry they're both dogs, but will be able to outland and outvolume Charles Jourdain, who I think will have gas tank issues at this new weight class.
Yeah, I think it depends on how well he holds up. I mean, I think Charles Jourdain debuted at lightweight. I don't know if he came in just to fill in, but he did debut at lightweight. The rest was featherweight. And then to go all the way down to 135, I think he really just to answer the question, can he hold out at that weight class? I think his skills are definitely enough to win a dogfight against an older guy, but maybe I would love that better for him at featherweight. But bantamweight, I think it's kind of a 50-50. But then also Victor Henry his last win is over a guy that's really not that impressive.
It's his last two wins are over guys that really aren't that impressive.
Yeah, so like if I take them both skill wise, I think Charles Jourdain is a better skill set to win it. I don't know how well he can perform at 135.
If he mixes in the wrestling and submissions like he's done in his last two, Charles Jourdain, or not last two, but before his last two, I think he has a decent job or a decent chance. But in a striking match, I'll take Victor Henry, whose main striking entries are jab, teep, and lead right straight, and he mixes those together so well, and then he uses those entries to then put volume on his opponents, switch off angles, and so on. If he has a performance like he did against Hany Barcelos, Charles Jourdain is going to lose a 3-round decision simply because I think his gas tank won't hold up. And those counters, though they'll be there, they'll be less there than Victor Henry's volume.
I think I'm going to contradict myself. I don't think I'm going to go with Charles Jourdain. I think he's fought much tougher opponents recently, and the decline with age as well. And he just fought someone like a guy like Sean Woodson, he took to a split decision. Besides his TKO was his last loss, I believe. But I think that's just a stronger force of opposition. And then again, I think it all really depends on how he takes 135. But for some reason, I got to stick with Jourdain. I think he's not going to be able to keep him at range the way Victor Henry would like to. And Victor Henry's a shorter guy, both height and reach. So I don't know how well his tools that he uses at length are going to really work.
I think I'm going to go with Henry on this one, purely because I believe the last time Charles Jourdain fought was in late June in 303, and getting knocked out, then dropping a whole new weight class just to fight, 4 months later. I think that is a lot of pressure, and I don't think he'll be able to show the best side of himself that fight. Maybe bantamweight is a division he belongs in, he'll do better next fight, but I just don't think this is the one. I think he dropped weight a little too early after his loss against Jean Silva.
So the next fight on the card that we will be covering is Rose Namajunas versus Aaron Blanchfield.
Oh, that's gonna be a fun one.
I don't think it's gonna be that fun. I think it's probably gonna be a lay-in prey by Aaron Blanchfield, or a Rose Namajunas reaching into her bag and pulling out the Esparza fights, the stay at distance, move around, and don't engage kind of style that she used in that second Esparza fight that made it one of the most boring fights in UFC history.
Yeah, I think, when I looked at this fight and I broke them both down, I'm like, Rose was primarily known for her grappling. That's what she really started off as. She wasn't the greatest striker until she started doing things like KOing the Boogie Woman and then one-tapping, well, not close to one-tapping Li Jingliang with her left foot. But then she has not looked as impressive since after that Esparza loss, and I think Pat Barry's probably half to blame on that one with a lot of things. but she just hasn't looked the same. And I think she's gonna be the same decisionator that she's been at this weight class. She's probably gonna get out. She's faced stronger people. She's like Li Jingliang is absolute menace of strength, and you have Jessica Andrade as well. Not that they are a weight class below, they are really strong. So I think she's not gonna be really outmuscled here. And it's grappling versus grappling. I think Rose just has the better tool bag, and she's just really well at taking that decision. She's gonna like Floyd Mayweather around it if she really has to, and I see her doing that.
I think from her resumes, Rose Namajunas has fought on the strawweight, right? I don't know the women's divisions too well.
Yeah, she was champion at strawweight and now is at flyweight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I was gonna say she has a very good resume at strawweight. I'm pretty sure she has wins over Joanna
Jen Jacek, yes.
Yeah, it's the boogie woman.
Yeah, Zhang Weili in 2021. And she fought Zhang Weili before 2021 as well, right? Or am I wrong? She fought her twice in 2021, where she won the belt and defended it.
She fought her twice in 2021, won the split decision again after knocking her out, and then lost to Esparza in 2022.
Okay,
she also has a victory over Andrade.
Yes.
Okay, because I was mixing it up then. I know she has wins over Zhang Weili, like I mentioned, Esparza. So, I mean, as far as resume goes, I do think that I'll favor Rose Namajunas in this fight. Because in women's fights, I think the person with just better experience and the woman who is, on paper would usually win. There's not a lot of crazy, switches in women's MMA. I feel like most of the time it just goes by the playbook. So I would favor Thug Rose in this one.
I don't think Rose has looked all too impressive in her few fights at this weight class. She's looked good. She's managed to scrape by all the competition that she's had, but she hasn't been very impressive like she was at strawweight. And I think a lot of that is due to the lack of physicality. And one thing Erin Blanchfield is physicality. She's pretty relentless, has a good gas tank. She does the same thing over and over again, which is try to take you down, and that's kind of all she has. But she does have a win over Andrade, very much past her prime Andrade, but that's probably Erin Blanchfield's best win. And I think with her, if she can get Rose down, she's going to win. If she can't, she'll lose. That's all it comes down to, in my opinion.
I think we have to look at the Manon Fiorot fight for both of them.
Yes.
Because they both, I believe Erin Blanchfield just lost to Manon Fiorot, and I think Thug Rose lost to her 2 fights prior.
Yes.
So both of them are pretty recent fights. And I watched them back, at least fairly, most of the fights yesterday. And I do think that Thug Rose performed better through those fights.
Much better
than Erin Blanchfield. That is also why I'm picking her. Because I think she was able to negate Manon Fiorot's takedowns much more efficiently than Erin Blanchfield was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just throughout the entire fight, Erin Blanchfield had moments where she looked lost. And I think that's where the Cajun experience comes in. Because you have to remember, Erin Blanchfield is still like relatively new compared to
25 to 32.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with Erin Blanchfield winning. I just think Rose is small for the weight class, and though she did good against Manon Fiorot, a lot of that is because Fiorot was able to cancel out Blanchfield's style, but not be able to cancel out Rose's style. Rose has a better striking style for fighting Manon Fiorot, and Erin Blanchfield is just not a good striker. She's basically a wannabe Khabib in women's MMA. And when we've seen Rose go up against wrestlers in the past, what she's done largely is the Esparza performance, where she tries to not engage. She tries to take away their ability to win, but by doing that, she hurts her own ability to win. And if she goes in with that, I think just Erin Blanchfield's doggedness and just relentlessness will pull through.
I think I'm going to have to disagree for opposite reasons. I think that dog, because of the Esparza fight, it takes 2 to tango, obviously. Esparza wasn't willing to go either. They were just kind of tit-for-tatting, just poking, just doing whatever. But Blanchfield is going to bring it to her, and Rose is a good enough counter-striker to where I think she will piece her up, especially how confused she got with Fiorot. Even though it's a different style, it's still kind of, Rose will bring out the same sort of pickpocket approach to her. And although she is naturally smaller, I think there's not a high skill ceiling for the women's flyweights once you get further down. Like the top 5, really great, but as you get further down, I just don't think they're as skilled. And I think when she's faced, when I have to bring this to this, Zhang Weili is so incredibly strong, and she has the wrestling. She didn't mix it up with Rose. I think she just brings nothing that Rose wouldn't have seen before. And although I can see definitely maybe her pulling out decision just by keeping her down or maybe like it goes just like the Esparza fight. I would just hope for all MMA fans around the world that she learned a tiny bit from that fight. And that's what I'm hoping on. Because if he did, I think that's the only way I see her losing, if it's a repeat of Esparza. And then we all lose at the end of the day.
Yes.
So I'm going to put in the fact that I think Rose is just going to win, just based off of how she's been at weight class. She hasn't been overpowered too much. She hasn't been exactly the queen of the strawweight division like she showed herself to be. But I still think she's way too skilled, and she can easily pull it off. And she's faced really strong people, so it's not like the strength's like the craziest of a factor. I'm just gonna have to go with her by decision.
I think decision is a good call here. I don't see maybe Aaron Javaf can pull off a lucky submission, but I do favor a decision overall.
I think that's unlikely, but yeah, I agree. It's going to be a decision either way. I'm going to say split decision in favor of Aaron Blanchfield, and that'll be my final call. Moving on to the final fight we're going to cover, Amir Albazi versus Brandon Moreno.
I think this is a matchup that is long overdue. I think this is going to be a fun one. This is the first time we see Amir Albazi in over a year, actually. Last time he fought was in June 2023.
Yeah, this one, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like it's kind of like a coin toss almost, because Moreno looked, I don't want to say abysmal, but he did not look great against Royval. And even though he didn't look great, he still took the fight to him. Like, it wasn't like an absolute slaughter, which was confusing on my end, because if my opponent is just throwing overhand rights, and that is all he does over the course of, I think it was a 5-rounder.
Yes.
And I'd never pick up on that once, and it works. So, like, not only did Moreno completely one-trick pony that entire fight and have a competitive fight, so it was just, I don't know what that was for him. He said he needed a break, and he took it. So hopefully he comes back with the style that we've known him for, not just the overhand off the counter every single second of every day. And then Amir lost to Kai Kara France unofficially. Officially won the split decision. But having watched that fight, that was almost nothing. And then I think he had his heart surgery as well, so I don't know how that's going to affect him. Heart surgery is a big thing. Like, you have that scar on your chest, and it'll affect you, and it all depends on how your surgeons actually did well. Surgeries aren't exactly 100% at any point in time. So I think there's questions to be answered on both sides, and there's so many questions that I don't know what to do but favor, I guess, Moreno, and the fact that he's more experienced guy. And although Amir has that almost Rob type of style, and Moreno did lose that Pantoja fight just off of being held in the back in the last round, I do think he's had that experience of that. And same with Kai. Kai was able to hold him off a bit, although Kai does have that better, like, city kickboxing style defending the first takedown. But I also think that Kai and Brandon have both gotten to really close fights with Askar Askarov, who has almost a similar style, just not as big. So I think he's seen it before, and I think Brandon will be able to at least pull it off, or at least I think he's capable of doing it. For me, this is a toss-up.
This is a very good close matchup. I think. I mean, either way, I think this will be a great fight. Hopefully, at least, bad things happen. This could just be a snooze fest. This could be a horrible performance, but on the book, I think this has possibility to be a great matchup. I don't favor Albazi at all. Like you said, he just come back from surgery. I think it was heart and neck, so I don't see his cardio faring well, especially later into those rounds, because this is a 5-rounder. And just Brandon Moreno having that experience. He's only 30. He's been in the division since God knows when, since 2013. I think, in Ultimate Fighter. He's faced almost everybody in that top 10 division. He's beaten almost everybody in that top 10 division. I think I will take experience to prevail on this one.
For me, the elephant in the room is, how does Brandon Moreno come into the fight? Because since his standout performance against Kai Kara France, where I felt like he put everything together, he's kind of looked worse and worse. Even though he beat Davison Figueiredo in the next fight, I thought he still looked better in the Kai Kara fight, getting the TKO with the kicks to the body. And also, after that, he then looks even worse against Pantoja, and then even worse against Royval. There's seemingly been a decline in performances, and I would blame this on the loss of his main coach, James Krause, who got booted from the UFC and is, I believe, still under federal investigation. The fact that the UFC essentially told him, you can no longer train in this gym, and he had to move gyms, I don't think the new gym is actually working out for him. If Brandon Moreno comes in as a vintage Brandon Moreno, where he's using the jab, where he's using his kicks, where he's punching in combination, not just throwing one overhand right over and over and over again, and he also shows the scrambling ability that he showed in the Davison Figueiredo fight, I think he's gonna win that. But if he comes in as an even more declined version of himself, then I think Amir Albazi will be able to pull it off in a close fight. I don't think this is going to be easy for Amir Albazi, no matter what Brandon Moreno decides to show up. But I don't have faith in Brandon Moreno to right the ship. And Amir Albazi is on a seemingly surge at the moment. He's been undefeated, and though he had a poor performance against Kai Kara where he should not have gotten the win, a lot of these prospects, after they get those kind of robberies, they come back and overperform your expectations.
That's true, but this is also a long break that Albazi took, and he is a surge, but that surge happened a while ago, and it's not uncommon for fighters, to be two dogs and then take a long break, whether it be injury, personal reasons, just anything, and then come back and then being abysmal. We've seen it a lot, but I do agree with you on this one. It just depends on how Moreno works in this one. Does he maintain his confidence that he's had over the last in the last 3 years ago? The same confidence when he was fighting Kai Kara fans. They had that the Figgy trilogies. Ever since then, I think the Pantoja fight he looked lost. Roval fight he looked lost. He looked like a shell of himself. So it all depends. Does he maintain that confidence and is he able to come back? Because he was very truthful with us. He said that he wasn't what he was expecting. He wasn't what the fans were expecting. He himself knew that this is not how he should be performing, and he took that rightful break. Now, does this break matter? We don't know. This was won't tell. It's very hard to predict. I do think Brandon Moreno's break will matter because he's an experienced fighter. If he himself admits to public, I need to take a break, I truly believe he's not gonna come back until he's ready to come back. Because then he knows he's gonna look stupid in front of everybody if he comes back and not ready.
And not only that, this fight's been canceled before, so he was ready much before this to have this fight. And they're both technically on their break, so it depends on who comes back. But even then, the worst Moreno we've seen went to a decision with Brandon Morval,
who also had a poor performance in that fight as well.
I mean, yeah, I guess. But Brandon Morval is mainly just straights and then some. I think he mixes. Not he barely takedowns. He is mainly a length fighter. So I guess the overhand is where that works, but doesn't mean you do it every single time he answers. So I guess, yeah, definitely in both parts. But that is, I have to see with Moreno on this one. Just because Albazi had that close fight with Kai Kara France. He's come back after surgery of all things. Had to cancel, went back, and now it's just... I don't see this fight going to a finish at all, so it's going to be probably by decision. Now, after heart surgery, can you do the 4th and 5th round? Although Brandon didn't have that Pantoja fight, I honestly think it all came down to the 5th round. Even though, let's say he wasn't the world beater when he looked like when he was beating Figgy, to me, it's still a close fight. The 5th round is where that all dictated. Mm-hmm. Just how, almost all of Pantoja's fights have gone recently, it's close fight till he holds them down in the 5th round. That's kind of how he wins all his title fights. So I guess the real standout performance or bad performance for me was the Royval fight. And having seen that, he knew that needs to be fixed. And I think that's probably what he's going to end up coming back with. I just favor more towards Moreno just with everything that's going on both sides. It's not a crazy favorite, but that's who I'm going to have to lean to. I think the odds actually reflect exactly how I feel. I think it's minus 175 on Moreno and then plus 145 on Albazi, which is slightly favoring Moreno. That's how I'm just going to go. Slightly favor Moreno by decision. Neither of these guys have been finished. Do I think either of them are going to get finished? No.
Probably not. It's a flyweight fight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a decision, and I think it depends how well Albazi's cardio holds out and how well Moreno can just not be held against the fence.
Albazi being a underdog is actually surprising to me. A lot of the times, I actually expect him to be the favorite because as far as betting odds go, I'm pretty sure that these Muslim Middle Eastern fighters are always favored on the card.
They're generally favored, yeah. Though again, Moreno, despite having lost his last two, against the top of the division, and Amir Albazi is not coming off a very confident standout performance. He's coming off a fight that a lot of people think was a robbery.
Yeah, and then the Moreno fights, the Pantoja fight was close. I can't even see. He's just escaping me constantly. Royval. I keep wanting to call him Kai Kara France. The Royval fight was still competitive, even though they both, especially Moreno, didn't look great. It was still a competitive fight. He didn't get mauled. So, at his worst, not being mauled by the top of the division, I just think a guy like that, after taking a break to come back better, that's who I'm just going to have to favor.
I'll still stick with Amir Albazi.
Going against you is scary because you won't fall us last time.
I didn't go flawless. I lost when we all lost.
Yeah.
Speaking of lost, UFC 308 reviewing our picks and where it went wrong, where we got it right, and how it ultimately turned out. Starting from the prelims going up to the main event.
I think 308 quite literally was the worst the worst possible outcome happens. Robert Whittaker got his jaw broken first round. Taporia knocked the fuck out of Max Holloway. This is literally the worst outcome. We're not saying we're Robert Whittaker for another year, maybe more. His jaw's gone.
His teeth are actually caved in.
Yeah.
You saw the photo, right?
Yeah.
It's fucked. It's gone.
They
This
look
might
like
be his career even. He's old. I don't.
Yeah, and he's talking about his jaw, how his lower jaw is his weakness, and you aim for the chin. How that's how we said the Dricus fight. He got hit right bottom of the chin by the teeth. You're gonna get hit there again. What's gonna happen when that happens? Which actually makes a lot of sense now when I think about it. If he has that weakness, and he got popped by a guy like Dricus, but then got spinning head kicked by Costa, it was just a landing difference.
Mm-hmm. He got dropped by a jab against Dricus, and he survived a spinning head kick. And that it is what it is. It's the end of Robert Whittaker as a contender. Ultimately, he can only be a gatekeeper now. And a similar thing for Max Holloway. Maybe he can have one more shot at the belt, but he's had so many shots so far. And unless he becomes undeniable again, he's not going to get another shot at Topuria.
Which I think he is capable of. But Max Holloway is a lot younger than Whittaker, I believe. I think that's a higher chance than I think Whittaker at any point in time. But
I think for Max Holloway, I think he just needs to go up to lightweight. That is something that he himself talked about in the interviews, in the post fights. I think that's where he belongs. He is getting old. I know he's still 32, which is prime time for MMA. But since he's been in the game for so long, this is him exiting his prime. The primes don't last the same depending on when you enter the fight game. I think at this point the weight cuts are getting to him, and lightweight is where he belongs. Now, do I think he's ever going to get the belt at lightweight? No, I don't think anyone's beating Islam. I think Islam is the greatest fighter in the roster. But he can definitely get some fun fights, more legacy fights, may potentially get an interim belt if something happens to Islam, or get you the BMF lineages, because he still has that. He still has a lot of fun routes ahead of him, but I don't see any title contention unless he makes himself very undeniable, which he can do, but very little. I think he has to beat, for lightweight, he has to beat Oliveira and maybe one more to be able to undeniable, and at featherweight he has to be able to beat Volk and Diego Lopez.
It's not looking good for either of them. They're both in the twilights of their career at this point. It's unfortunate.
It is.
Though, again, starting from the prelims, we got Chris Barnett versus Kennedy, whatever his name is.
I knew that. That's the only thing I knew.
The meme fight of the night did end in knockout.
First round. Yep.
Apparently, Barnett's knees finally gave out on him.
Yeah, he actually pulled an Ortega and jumped and absolutely destroyed, I think it was his ankle.
Oh.
And I think that even made it even worse on the fact of, I don't know how he even survived almost to the end of the first round, because Kennedy was taking no chances. He was poking and poking and poking till eventually he was gone.
Yeah.
And that's practically how I saw the fight going. And even with, I guess, the ankle injury early on, I think that's how the fight would have continued. And I think that was just a simple conclusion.
Yeah.
You saw the video, right, where because Renee was jumping up on the direction and he kind of fell back and stumbled. I think that's where it happens.
I think heavyweight is probably a good weight class for Kennedy, and he should stay there. I think light heavyweight he's draining himself too much. He's 6'5", and he looked full and strong at heavyweight. Next, Oralbai versus Matuz Rebecki, the dog fight of the night.
That was a good fight.
That was just hell in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lot of blood everywhere, but good back and forth. When it comes to fights like that, just get both of them to win. That's how I feel about those. Is they're both at such a good point, and it's just such a good weight class. It was just a good fight. There's nothing more you can say about that. Both of them have incredible grit, and Urwai showed it a bit more because he was in a bit more trouble. I think it was the third round.
Yes.
But both of them showed incredible grit and just went to fight or die, and that's pretty much sums up that entire fight with a good amount of blood everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
it was bloody. I will say, though I got it right for the wrong reasons. I thought Rebecki would be able to take Oralbai down, and though he was able to take him down in the third, he was never able to hold him down. Oralbai's scrambling ability was far better than I thought it would be, and he was actually able to scramble to better positions and almost take the third round after almost getting finished in it. I think this fight was pretty much decided by power and who landed the harder shot first, and the explosiveness of Rebecca allowed him to just cave in and blow up the face of Oralby.
That eye happened in the first round. I think that's a big part of that fight.
Yeah.
Is that eye was I don't know how he was able to see two. I don't know if he just guessed.
I think he guessed.
Yeah,
there's no shot. It was
he
was
was
bad.
just peeking out of this eye. Like it was bad, and like especially the damage criteria. I think that shot really just set the tone for everything else going forward.
I think overall though, if we learn one thing is that both these fighters have bright futures.
They're going somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think Oralby needs to be moving down to this fight. Although
No.
I don't think he obviously he's getting a ranked fight. I think he's still supposed to be fighting a top contender. If he wins his next fight, then he gets a ranked fight. But if there's one thing I want to talk about is their gas tanks. For Oralby to be able to survive that third round, I expected him to be knocked out. I thought his gas tank was going to crash because a lot of times when you see these young prospects be put into deep waters in the third round where they're on the ground getting battered by a guy that's like Rebecca.
They give up.
Yeah, they just give up. They flounder. It happened with Mike Mallett. It happened with it's escaping my name. It was in the 302. I forgot, but these especially when these young guys kind of get held down in the third round, they escape, they panic, their experience kind of lets them down. But Oralby stood up. He was able to scramble out to survive. Maybe you could say that's Ref's fault. Maybe you could have made an argument that the fight should have been called because it was pretty bloody. But I'm glad it wasn't called because we got that amazing scramble out. We got an amazing transition into a bigger bang in the last minute of the fight. I think overall it was just beautiful for both of them.
I think Oralby showed something that he needed to show eventually. I think this loss will only improve him in the sense of he has this never say quit attitude. He has a will to constantly try to win. The fact that he was still trying to win in the third round was very impressive. And I think, aside from the power shots, he showed to be the more complete striker. Though a lack of defense, he threw a lot more variety in his shots. And the crashing and elbows to counter those overhand lefts by Rebecca, that was a good adjustment. It just was he was just unable to capitalize on that, and it was unable to bring him to the win. But he showed to be, I think he has a brighter future than Rebecca, though I do think Rebecca has a bright future as well.
Yeah, I think he took too much damage early on before he figured out how to deal with it. And that's pretty much as the fight goes, and especially with one eye practically being, as McGregor's words, a balloon. You're gonna feel that toll throughout the fight. Your striking and pretty much all aspects is gonna be affected. Like, you don't train blind with one eye unless you're Bisping or Chara.
Jeff Neal versus RDA. I think we called it.
Yeah.
RDA got sent to the glue factory. He's old. He's done. It's done.
Because was it his knee or his ankle?
I think it was his knee.
His knee. Oh, so old man.
But he was being blasted before the knee gave out. Like, everyone knew where that was going. Like, I think his knee might have saved him from like maybe 3 more years of getting just beat on.
Yeah.
Because they weren't giving him like old guys like what they're doing with Jim Miller. They're not giving you good happy little presents. They're giving you like monsters. They're not kind to his end off on his career at all.
Retire, old man.
Yeah.
Giving him Jeff Neal when he's basically 40 is murder.
Yeah.
That's not fair at all, I think.
After that, Ige versus Murphy. I think we got the dynamics of the fight pretty accurately. Murphy was just able to survive, and Dan Ige gassed trying to go for a finish.
Yeah, that's pretty much how the fight went. He just gassed himself, and then the fight was just a lot more competitive since, because he didn't have that same pace that he had on the first round, because it was low practically. That's practically it, and besides some really questionable scrambles, but that's all that fight really was. We pretty much had it to a T. It just went more patient with your finish.
It just went through a different way than what we thought. Ige might be able to get him out if they had a rematch. Never know, but I think we got correct on how competitive the fight would be and the dynamics. And I think that's what matters with that one. As for Ankalaev versus Rakic, we picked it right.
It was the usual snooze fest. Is he getting a title shot? Probably freaking not. They're gonna go with almost anyone else. If you are striking almost the entire time, and it is still boring, then like there's no way they give you someone like that. Like there's no way. And Dana even said it himself. Not that he doesn't deserve it. Sure, I mean like he probably deserves it, but will he get it? Like Bilal Muhammad took forever, and that was just with wrestling. If you're boring wall striking, Bilal Muhammad was able to put away Sean Brady, and they still didn't care. If you're not able to put away someone who Geary just put away, and he just got knocked out, then and it was just a snooze fest. I don't think that was the statement he needed.
It was not.
No, it's and I mean partially. I don't know if you guys saw this, but towards the second round, Rakish's coach for some reason told Rakish he was up 2-0 and for Rakish to slow down and to kind of bring it out a decision. This is why the third round was Rakish just backing away the whole fight. Which personally, I don't understand how you see the first two fights and think, hey, Rakish is winning 2-0. If anything, best case scenario for Rakish was a 1-1, Rakish first, Ankalaev second.
Yeah.
I personally had a 2-0 barely, but 1-1. I could see some bolster that. But overall, Ankalaev, does he deserve it? I mean, who else would you give the title shot besides Ankalaev? I mean, you wouldn't bring up Carlos Ulberg. You wouldn't give another,
They'd find anyone, to be honest. And you got to think Alex is probably going to take a bit of a break. And in that break, any statement can be made. That thing is up for grabs practically.
Mm-hmm.
And Clear Roundtree showed it's up for grabs. If you show something or even just call it, he practically Nate Diaz'd his way to that title of asking for it, and he got it. So I think that is just an up for grabs thing because they don't want Ankalaev there.
Yeah,
they really don't at all, and they have shown it completely. Now, does he deserve it? I mean, yeah. I mean, that's who else unless you're gonna just wait for someone to make a statement, which they are probably gonna do. But it's just snooze fest to snooze fest to snooze fest, and as we know, Dana does not like a snooze fest.
He wouldn't, because right now we have what? We have the Laws champion. We have I guess Pantoja is a bit. I like Pantoja, but people call him boring. I see why he's boring. He's a decisionator. And then you have Marab, yeah. And then you have, I guess, Drickus, who's exciting.
He's fun.
He's exciting. He's a plot armor merchant. The stuff he does should not ever work.
It's kind of like if you made up like a main character, and then it's just random bullshit technique I learned 5 minutes ago in the back. Yeah. Go, and then it somehow works. Yeah.
There was one time where he walked 1, 2, tripped, and then somehow got Izzy's ankle and dropped him.
Yeah, I'm not even I think he actually just fell. I don't know if he got dropped. He got hit and went and ankle picked him. And I've never seen someone fall flat on their face and not even reaching to take someone down, but almost like it was like if someone got knocked out cold stiff and then took someone down with their planked body. I've just never seen that before in my life. And to me, he's just a guy that he rolls the dice every single time, and he's just rolling the dice well. He's a good Vegas player.
You remember that the Islam Makhachev the ankle pick against Saporier? I saw visions of that, but you compare the two sides, you got DDP's ankle picks and you got Islam Makhachev's ankle pick. I think that's funny. And did he got clipped on his way down, or I think Jim just tripped.
He got clipped while he was
tripping. I think he did both. He did everything.
That kind of sworn I saw his legs tumble together in mid-fight. I was like, I was like, no, this is not be working. But back to what I was mentioning, I don't think that Dana White would ever want Ankalaev's champion when Marab and Bilal exist. This is not gonna happen. I think if Carlos Ulberg knocks out Ozdemir convincingly and he asks for a title shot, I think Dana White will cream all over that opportunity because Carlos Ulberg is a demon.
Absolutely. They'll probably want to put Carlos Ulberg in there over Ankalaev, even though he doesn't really deserve it. Going back to Robert Whittaker versus Chimaev and the more technical aspect of it, I think what we saw is Robert Whittaker doesn't have great cage wrestling defense. He has open mat wrestling defense, great, but when he's against a cage wrestler, though he did a bunch of stuff right, he got his down block. It just didn't matter because he was smushed up against the cage and his feet were taken out from under him, and he couldn't build up on one knee correctly and get back to standing. Chimaev was able to trip him every time, and he never attacked the hands. If you want to see someone who does great against the same type of wrestling, that body lock to back take type wrestling that Robert Whittaker failed against, Sandhagen versus Umar is a great example of just someone neutralizing that aspect by attacking the hands. Sandhagen gave up his back several times in that fight, disconnected the hands, separated. He wasn't able to win the striking match in that, but it showed an ability to neutralize the wrestling that Robert Whittaker just doesn't. That's just not part of his game.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm just worried. I'm not worried about. I'm excited to see what Hamza Chimaev will do to DDP now because Robert Whittaker was able to take down DDP on numerous times, and what Hamza Chimaev did in the first 5 seconds, just immediately took him down, and just backed him up against the cage. I don't think there's any case can be made against Hamza Chimaev becoming champion now.
I mean, I guess I don't know how he faces against a much bigger guy. I mean, Whittaker, although he did get submitted and he was able to get up to a certain point, but then he just couldn't handle the chain wrestling because as soon as you get up off of it, you have to be able to turn around and keep something with you. As soon as Whittaker got up, he had nothing else in his hands, and he just kind of stood up, and then Chimaev just attacked the legs again. And although he did get submitted, it wasn't exactly a choke. It was pain. He dislocated his jaw, so he just kind of got caught in that end. And I think he did do a decent enough job up to the point where that type of submission is purely just pain. So you're not going to get put out. So most of the time when someone puts that on you, you're able to get rid of their hands, fight the hands. It's just going to hurt. But for Robert Whittaker's case, I think his mouth is open as well. And that's his general weakness, as he said before. I think he even said it it was earlier in the press conference that he did, that his bottom jaw is toast. So I don't think he gets past Dricus. I think he's too big, and I don't think he's going to be able to just muscle him out in one round.
I bet against Dricus every single time. I thought he'd lose to Brunson. He won. He almost got finished, but he won. I thought he'd lose to Robert Whittaker, but he won. I thought he'd lose to Israel Adesanya, but he won. I'm going to say he's going to lose to Hamzat Chimaev, and I'm probably going to be wrong. He can't keep getting away with this.
If DDP can somehow pull out his plot armor merchant and take down Hamza Chimaev, I don't know what I'll do. Genuinely, if he's able to take down Chimaev and finish him, I don't know. Can DDP do that? Book-wise, no. But it's DDP. He is somehow able to do anything. Anything wrong, but somehow right.
And honestly, I think if he's going to beat him, I think it's going to be striking.
Oh yeah, I mean that is the best way to go.
I mean, I think Hamzat, if he's to beat him, it's not going to be with wrestling. I think.
Oh, you think Hamzat's going to beat him by striking?
The only way Hamzat wins, I think, really is going to be striking because Dricus is so big, and as soon as you get past that first round with Hamzat, and maybe even past the second, he completely gives up on his takedown. He will strike with you and go to war with you. And Dricus is no stranger to just sitting there and going at it. Although he goes at it a bit weirdly, I think that's probably where that fight's going to end up, and that's what's going to determine it. And I think Dricus is capable of taking him down. His takedowns are weird and they are random. He's just huge. I don't think Hamzat's ever faced somebody that is just this big. And I think that plays a huge factor in everything. If he fought the welterweight Dricus, I think Chimaev would maul him. But he's way too big now, and I think that's going to play a big factor in the future fight.
Hamza Chimaev has been the bigger person in almost all his fights, right? He's bigger than Usman, he's bigger than Burns, he's bigger than Owens. Was he bigger than Whittaker? I think he is. Okay, I didn't know, fish side-wise, from, the cage, it looked pretty similar, but...
Interestingly, Bill, because they had to fill out. Whittaker filled out for middleweight, but Hamza is taller. He is, I don't know if his shoulders are bigger, but he is an actually bigger guy.
6'2", right, Chimaev is?
Yeah, he's surprisingly tall. I don't know why I thought he was shorter than he is.
Every win Chimaev is going to have at middleweight, if he does beat Dricus, will be over a former welterweight. I find that interesting. Dricus was at welterweight when he was outside the UFC. So he'll have never faced a true middleweight for their whole career fighter if he when he fights Dricus. Even Sean Strickland was a former welterweight and lost to Usman. So all the top middleweights were former welterweights except Kyle Baralio. That's about it. And Israel Adesanya.
Well, he was light heavyweight for a little bit. I guess for pure middleweights, he had a little...
Yeah. Finally, the depression of the night.
Yeah, I don't even got much time, so I'm just going to say it was so winnable. He just used so many tools that it then became a disadvantage for him.
He did. It was all... The boxing was actually working, and the kicks that did work were the teeps and the knee stomps, and that was about it. He used too much. He tried to knee at the finishing sequence. by kicking, he was keeping himself in one place, allowing Topuria to close in on him. His best stuff and where he hurt Topuria, I think it was in the second round, he was able to hurt Topuria and actually pressure him a little bit. Where he was able to do that was through a 1-2. His 1-2s were working. They were and the knee stomps were giving Topuria hell. There was so much he was doing right, but ultimately it just didn't matter. The margin of error wasn't enough, and he just made too many errors and got hit by a perfect, beautiful left hook, and finally his chin cracked. It couldn't take it.
Yeah, I mean, I believe on the scorecards, Max Holloway was winning the first 2 rounds, and like you said, these mistakes just catch up. Topuria is a person where you have to be flawless. If you make a single mistake in your sequence, he will catch it, and then he will capitalize on that. And I think that's what happened. He got caught with a mean right cross that stumbled him, and then from there, he just was not able to recover as quickly as he thought.
I think the thing that was most, not disappointing, but most surprising about this match is that at least I got it completely wrong. I thought Max Holloway's chin would hold up. Almost every clean shot that Topuria landed buzzed Max. I also thought Max's tools would be the key to victory. It wasn't. His boxing really was the key to being able to win this fight. And I thought Topuria mixing in the grappling, which he did do in the first round, would be what helped him the most. But Max Holloway just got up. He got up and he got away, and it didn't really affect the match that much. Yeah, so
best boxer in the UFC. I think he should have stuck with that, to be honest.
Probably.
I think we could be looking at a much different result if he did. Although the kicks, like the leg kicks, did work, but they did not work enough to the point where when he finally got caught, Poirier wasn't slowed down at all.
Mm-hmm. That's the end of this episode of the Fight Night Podcast. Signing off.